Welcome back to SKB Diary. The downfall of Mayor Tiffany Henyard. Emails, covert recordings, and a courtroom packed with journalists, residents, and legal teams. A tangled mess of bribes, secret deals, and taxpayer-funded indulgences finally caught up with Henyard, obliterating the image she had carefully crafted for years. Once celebrated as the unstoppable super-mayor of Dolton and the powerful overseer of Thornton Township, Henyard's reputation as a slick-talking, confident, and untouchable leader was ripped apart as explosive evidence unveiled the dark truth behind her climb to power. Her image had once towered from billboards across the city, an icon of hope and progress. But under the harsh glare of courtroom lights, that same face looked pale, hollow, and shell-shocked. The tension was thick as prosecutors rolled out damning emails, financial trails, and secret tapes that laid out a blatant trail of corruption. Padded salaries, taxpayer-funded shopping binges, suspicious payouts, and tactics aimed at silencing whistleblowers. Longtime supporters in Dolton, many who once praised her as a pioneer, sat in stunned silence. The leader they'd trusted had been unmasked as a con artist. Then, the silence cracked. In a burst of rage, Henyard slammed her fist on the table, the impact loud enough to send her chair screeching across the polished floor. She stood, voice trembling with fury, and screamed, "This is a setup!" Gasps rippled across the courtroom as she pointed a shaky finger at the prosecution and shouted, "This is political! Y'all can't handle a strong woman!" The irony hung heavy. The same woman accused of bullying staff, rigging budgets, and treating public funds like a personal ATM was now playing the victim. Classic Henyard. Deflect, dramatize, and paint herself as the underdog, even as the empire she built on deceit crumbled around her. In a desperate bid to regain control, she turned on her legal team. "You were supposed to fix this," she hissed, her tone venomous. One attorney shuffled through papers, visibly rattled. The other kept their head down, avoiding her glare entirely. For the first time in her career, Henyard had no script, no control, and no escape. The truth had finally cornered her. Then came the moment that would dominate headlines across the country. Henyard, seething, snatched up her designer handbag, yanked off her microphone, and stormed out of the courtroom. The room erupted. Reporters jumped to their feet, cameras flashing, chasing after her. Chaos exploded as court officers called for order. Residents, lied to, silenced, and ignored, rose in applause. Justice, at long last, had arrived. Outside the courthouse, the energy was just as electric. Henyard's heels clacked furiously against the pavement as she stormed down the steps, flanked by security. Reporters swarmed with microphones raised. "Mayor Henyard, any comment on the leaked tapes? Is it true millions of public dollars are missing? Are you planning to resign?" She didn't say a word. Her jaw clenched, eyes locked. Forward. The once charming mayor was gone, replaced by someone who looked trapped, wounded, and seconds from unraveling. Then, just before she reached her black SUV, a voice cut through the crowd. "You think you can run now, Tiffany?" A woman stepped into her path, a former Dolton treasurer. Once a quiet bureaucrat, now a fiery whistleblower. She had resigned months ago, citing corruption and shady dealings within Henyard's administration. At the time, Henyard dismissed it as bitterness. But now, the treasurer stood strong, her eyes blazing. "You silenced us all," she said, voice calm but razor-sharp. "But you can't outrun the truth." Henyard froze. The once mighty mayor looked small, stripped of power. Cameras captured every second. Reporters leaned in, knowing they were witnessing the final unraveling of a political giant. Inside the courtroom, Henyard's inner circle sat paralyzed. Phones buzzed non-stop. Staffers whispered in panic. No one had a strategy. Their leader had walked away. Some rushed to draft statements. Others quietly slipped out, desperate not to get caught in the wreckage. Henyard's control over the story had collapsed. Just days earlier, she had ranted live on Facebook, accusing critics of targeting her for being a strong black woman doing the hard work. She called it a smear campaign and claimed the system feared her power. But the public wasn't convinced. The media dubbed it a live meltdown. Community members called it manipulative and tone-deaf. Her base had started to crumble. Even her most loyal allies were rethinking everything. What remained was a painful snapshot of a political journey that began with hope, but ended in ruin. Her early years brought inspiration. She rose fast, seen as a bold, unapologetic changemaker. But over time, hope gave way to entitlement. The reckless spending, the bullying, the secrecy, it all told the story of a leader who lost her way. Millions in public money had vanished. Development funds were misused. Promised projects stalled or abandoned. Meanwhile, the salaries of top aides ballooned with little accountability. Now, with an FBI investigation ramping up, possible charges looming, and a chorus of voices demanding she step down, Henyard's political reign was collapsing. Her empire, once built on charm and control, was crumbling under the weight of its own corruption. Still, she tried to keep the act going. In interviews, she ducked hard questions. At public events, she stayed combative. But the cracks were visible, and the people of Dalton had seen enough. Outside the courthouse, the confrontation ended as quickly as it began. Henyard shoved past the treasurer and climbed into her SUV. The door slammed, but not before one last voice from the crowd shouted, "This is what happens when you steal from the people." The SUV sped away, flashing lights in pursuit, and a tidal wave of unanswered questions behind her. Back in the courtroom, the space slowly cleared. Reporters filed their stories. Residents exchanged knowing glances. The Tiffany Henyard era wasn't ending with applause. It was ending with a warning. A message about trust, responsibility, and what happens when power becomes a weapon. What began as a journey powered by bold vision and community hope had ended in shame, scandal, and betrayal. The fall of Tiffany Henyard wasn't just political, it was a reckoning. And Dalton would never forget. Frozen in place, Tiffany Henyard hesitated. Then, in a split-second flash of reckless bravado, she stepped forward, her face just inches from the former treasurer's. Her voice dropped to a venomous whisper, laced with threat. But in her typical arrogance, Henyard failed to realize this moment was being captured live. The treasurer didn't flinch. Instead, she turned toward the crowd of reporters and smirked. Loud enough for the world to hear, she declared, "You heard that, right? She just threatened me." Social media erupted. Hashtags exploded across timelines. Henyard exposed, Dalton deserves better. The world watched in real time as the myth of Mayor Tiffany Henyard shattered. The iron-fisted, image-obsessed leader was crumbling in the public eye. Inside the courthouse, the hearing pressed on without her. With Henyard gone, so was the secrecy. The prosecution seized the moment, laying bare the truth she'd fought so hard to bury. The evidence wasn't just damning, it was catastrophic. A jaw-dropping $30 million in financial discrepancies was revealed. Gasps filled the courtroom as the lead prosecutor spoke with deliberate weight. "Your Honor, we've uncovered over $30 million in questionable financial activity." The silence was suffocating. This wasn't just poor management. It was systematic. Embezzlement, fake invoices, shell companies, and mysterious consulting fees. Then came the bombshell. Many of these funds weren't even tied to Dalton. They were funneled into luxury real estate in other states. Money meant for local schools, roads, and public safety. Gone. Whispers swept the room. Who owned those properties? When the names were revealed, jaws dropped. Members of Henyard's inner circle, her top aides, even her boyfriend, who had recently vanished from public view, was tied to the assets. This wasn't just shady. It was organized, premeditated, and criminal. And Henyard wasn't even there to defend herself. Then the judge spoke, calm but commanding, authorizing an official federal criminal investigation into Mayor Tiffany Henyard's financial conduct. The gavel struck. The room burst into murmurs. A line had been crossed. What was once dismissed as a rumor was now a federal case. Outside, the crowd exploded with emotion. Years of silence, fear, and gaslighting gave way to a thunderous chorus. "Lock her up! We finally got her!" It was a moment of triumph, bittersweet, fueled by years of betrayal. Meanwhile, just blocks away, Henyard sat in her SUV, oblivious to the chaos unfolding in court. Still trapped in her delusions, she believed she could twist the narrative, play the victim, blame the system. Her phone buzzed nonstop, calls, texts, alerts. She didn't answer, until one name flashed across the screen, her top advisor. She picked up, her voice cold. "What?" The voice on the other end was panicked. "Madam Mayor, it's bad, really bad." She held her breath. "They're coming after you." Her stomach dropped. This was no longer political, it was criminal. No media spin, no tough rhetoric, no strong woman defense would save her now. She clutched the phone, motionless. The leaks, the evidence, the recordings. It was all crashing down. The empire she'd built through fear and manipulation was collapsing, brick by brick. Inside the courtroom, the judge's ruling confirmed what many had feared, and others had prayed for. The criminal probe was officially underway. The crowd outside roared louder. Some waved signs, others cried. For Dalton, this wasn't just justice, it was liberation. And just when it seemed the storm couldn't intensify further, a final twist emerged. A whistleblower stepped forward, someone from inside Henyard's own office. "I worked there for years," the woman said during a live TV interview, her voice trembling. "I watched the money move. I saw how it disappeared. And when I spoke up, I was threatened." "Threatened by who?" the interviewer asked, wide-eyed. The answer was already clear. The nail in Henyard's political coffin wasn't hammered in by rivals. It came from within. On live television, the whistleblower held up a small audio recorder, evidence that Henyard had personally threatened staff who tried to come forward. The recording, long rumored, was real, and it was devastating. Back in court, the prosecution wasted no time. With the whistleblower's testimony now public, they filed for an expanded investigation. The judge approved it on the spot. The courtroom buzzed with disbelief and relief. For the people of Dalton, who had endured intimidation and silence, this wasn't just a legal victory. It was vindication. Outside, the chants swelled. Signs waved. Emotions spilled. Some wept. Others screamed with joy. The justice, they thought, would never come, had finally arrived. And then it happened. The first arrest. Not Henyard. Not yet. It was her top financial advisor, the man who handled the city's money and stood at her side for years. The arrest was swift, public, and symbolic. More would follow. The walls were closing in. The true shock hit when the headlines confirmed it. The FBI was officially involved. This wasn't just a local scandal anymore. The case had gone fully federal. Henyard's body stiffened as the full weight of it sank in. This wasn't some routine inquiry. The FBI wasn't just asking questions. They were issuing subpoenas, freezing assets, flipping insiders. This was the real thing. She turned to her attorney, her voice sharp, shaking. "Fix this." But he said nothing. He didn't argue, didn't reassure, didn't even blink. His silence hit harder than words ever could. A quiet admission that there was no fixing this. Tiffany Henyard, once the most feared name in Dalton politics, was no longer in charge. She wasn't orchestrating the narrative anymore. She was the narrative, the accused, the headline, the hunted. Outside, the crowd's chants grew louder. echoing down the streets and bouncing off the very buildings she used to walk into like she owned them. Her name, once stamped on banners and billboards, had become something else entirely. A warning, a symbol of downfall, a name that now drew ridicule instead of respect. She sat paralyzed in her car, gripped by a numbing dread. The same woman who once seized power through intimidation and charm, who bent the system to her will without consequences, now sat completely powerless, helpless as everything unraveled. This wasn't just a public relations nightmare. This was the end? And the investigation? Far from over. With the FBI digging deeper, more arrests were imminent. Former allies were already flipping, trading secrets for lighter sentences. Every shady deal, every dollar funneled through back channels, every threat whispered in a hallway. It was all being documented, dissected, and exposed. Now only one question remained. Would Tiffany Henyard cut a deal to save herself, or make one last, desperate move to escape it all? The people of Dalton were watching. The world was watching. And this time, there was no spinning the truth. No hiding behind press conferences. No dodging the spotlight. The reckoning had arrived. And justice wasn't knocking. It was already inside.